Hello, welcome. So, in this video, I want to talk about a guy who was able to escape from prison not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in his lifetime. And not just that, but he was also able to radically change the Japanese prison system as well. This guy has been living in my head rent-free for a few weeks at this point. And I think he's a very interesting character. He isn't necessarily a hero, you see. It's complicated. Okay, spoilers. He most likely did commit murder. So, not necessarily a hero, but it's interesting. This guy's life is interesting, and I want to talk about him in this video, okay? So, that's it. That's the intro. We're going to talk about him. Okay. To understand the story on a deeper level, we need to look into the Japanese prison system. Let's look at present-day Japan. Did you know there are only 2 developed countries in the entire world which are pro-death penalty? These 2 countries are the United States of America and Japan. And no, by the way, the prisons on the death row are not killed by injections, but are killed by the old-fashioned way, by hanging. What I'm about to say next is quite shocking, so I'm just gonna warn you right now. If a suspect of a crime makes a confession during the police interrogation, even if that confession was made by the suspect due to torture by the police officers, it is still considered valid in the court of law. There are many cases of police officers forcing a confession out of them, and that confession had been used as evidence against that particular person. And even if the evidence is really sketchy, it doesn't matter. Because the person already confessed. It doesn't matter whether that confession was forced out of the person. And by the way, only 3% of Japanese criminal cases have interrogations which are actually recorded on a camera. The rest of the 97% of cases are not recorded. Here's another thing about the Japanese legal system. Let's say that you're found guilty of something in Japan and you are facing the death penalty. If you don't agree with the death penalty and you want to appeal it to the Supreme Court for another hearing, you can. Wait, really, Jean? There is no catch whatsoever? Oh yeah, there is a catch. Just because you appeal the decision doesn't guarantee that you won't be executed before your case is heard. There have been many cases of people just being executed before their case was even heard. So yeah, that is present-day Japan. I am not telling you this because I am anti-Japan or something like that. Every country has its own problems. America, for instance, has its own problems. France has its own problems, Literally, like every country on earth has its problems. Japan is no exception. I am not telling you this because I have any sort of negative intent. I am telling you this just to give you an idea of what the Japanese prison system is like today. And back when this story took place, it was even worse. So let's just jump into this. Our story begins on 31st July 1907 in Aomori, Japan, where Yoshie Shiratori was born. He was born in a middle-class family and had humble beginnings. As a teenager, he worked in farms, and later he worked at a tofu shop for a while, and also worked as a fisherman catching crabs. When Shiratori got older, he married a woman and had a lovely daughter as well. However, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. In his later years, he became addicted to gambling, and this is what changed his life for the worse. His habit of gambling one day landed him in big trouble. In 1936, the police of Japan arrested him with charges of robbery and murder, and during the interrogation with the police, he did confess to his crimes. However, in front of the judge, he said that he didn't murder anybody and he was being framed by a local gang. He said the confession that the police got of him was made in torture. But as we have talked before, even if that was true, that would not negate the confession that he had made under Japanese law. So, he was a convict awaiting judicial judgment, and for the time being, he was shifted to Aomori prison. The condition of that prison was brutal, to say the least. The guards of the prison used to torture him repeatedly, often kicking and hitting him and making him work long hours, and were verbally abusive as well. As days went by, Shiratori believed he would be handed a death penalty for murder and robbery for sure. And day by day, the torture committed by the jail guards was also becoming unbearable for him. So he decides to break the prison and starts his preparation. He started observing the duty patterns of the guards. When does the guard shift changes? The duration the patrolling happens, and he notes all of this in his mind. He continues his observation for about 6 months. He knew it takes 15 minutes for the guard to complete his patrolling of the barracks and return to his cell again for another round. He knew he had these 15 minutes to escape, and all he had was a small little metal wire he got from the steel bucket which was provided to him for bathing. One morning at about 5:30 a.m., just after the guard passed his barrack, he used the metal wire to break open the lock of his cell. There were a total of 6 locked doors. Using the same metal wire, he opened one lock after another, and within 15 minutes, he managed to unlock all the doors and fled. That is impressive. Under 15 minutes, he was able to break 6 locked doors. So that means he was able to break a prison lock in just about 2 minutes or so. That is very impressive. By 5:45 a.m., he was a free man. The guard who comes for the next patrolling round just sees him sleeping on his mattress. During the subsequent rounds, the guard observed some wires lying close to his bed. So, the guard opens the door to have a closer look, and as he removes the blanket, he finds the pillow stacked in such a way so that it gives an appearance of a man sleeping. Shiratori was not in the cell. The guard raises an alarm, and the search began for the convict. But by then, Shiratori had already left. However, unfortunately, his freedom just lasted 3 days. After his prison escape, he was still in Aomori, and the thing is, he didn't have any money or food. So he decides to go to an hospital and tries to steal some supplies there. And unfortunately for Shiratori, he was caught by the hospital staff and handed over to the police. The police were already searching for him, so they again shifted him to Aomori prison. And you have to realize he was already accused of murder and robbery in his previous case, and now he broke from prison. And what does he decide to do after breaking from prison? Oh yeah, he decides to steal some supplies from a hospital. This does not look good for Shiratori. Most people were pretty confident that he was gonna get the death penalty for sure. But somehow, some way, he managed to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment by the court. And because of his previous jailbreaks, the court shifted him to a much more secure prison in Akita. The Akita prison was a much more secure prison, and the jail guards there knew that he had a reputation of jailbreak. Just like the previous guards, these jail guards also used to torture him repeatedly by overworking him and challenged him that he would not dare to break the secure prison. During the cold season, he was forced to sleep on the concrete floor without any bed or even a blanket. He wasn't even provided with warm clothes. So, this is what Akita is like in December, and he was forced to sleep on a concrete floor and he didn't even have warm clothes. That is just inhumane and cruel. He was always handcuffed and kept in a specially designed cell that was just long and wide enough for a single person. Shiratori was laughed upon by the jail guards and he was tortured by them. There was only one person, the head guard of the prison, Kobayashi, who always treated him gently and talked to him politely. He also scolded the other jail guards when they tortured him. Shiratori was disappointed with the behavior of other guards, and he believed that Kobayashi was the only good and humble person among all the jail authorities. He stayed in Akita prison from 1936 to 1942 for 6 years. And as we all know, during that period, the Second World War had started, and Japan was a country fighting against the Allies. It was a stormy night on 15th June 1942 with heavy rains and strong wind. The jail guard came to patrol in the morning according to their schedule. The jail guard peeped inside his prison and to verify his presence, but was surprised to find that, oh no, he was not in his cell. Shiratori has escaped from prison once again. This time he started his planning about 8 months before. He only had a piece of metal wire. That is it. During the night, when patrolling was negligible, he used to open his handcuffs and practice climbing through the copper walls by extending his hands both ways. Now, there was even a movie made based on Shiratori's life story, and in one of the scenes, the guard asks Shiratori how was he able to climb up the smooth walls of the prison cell and reach the window at the top, and he said, like a lizard, which is interesting. Anyways, after each attempt, he used to relock his handcuffs back. Slowly and gradually, he practiced climbing and one day was able to reach the window at the top. He found that the window had steel rods, but the frame was made of wood. With the help of an eating plate, he was able to weaken the base of the wood. He was provided with soup bowls during lunch, and he used to pour the soup bowls in the base of the wooden frame to make it weak. He checked that the wooden frame came out entirely along with the steel bars and waited for a stormy night to hide his footsteps. He executed his plan to perfection and was able to escape from prison for the second time. However, even though he was able to escape from prison, he couldn't just go back to his normal life. Shiratori was married and even had a daughter. And even though he wanted to visit his family, he knew that the police would be keeping a close watch on his family. So he decided to not go there. He instead wanted to lead a simple and respectful life, not like a runaway convict always chased by the police. He had already spent 6 years of his life imprisonment in Akita prison. Even though he wanted to live a simple life, it was difficult for him. You see, when you've been tortured for more than 6 years of your life, it is very hard to just forget about all that and move on like nothing happened. Because it did happen to you. That torture did happen. It's hard to just forget and let it go. After 3 months of his escape from Akita prison, he decided to take a very brave and foolish step. He decides to approach Kobayashi, the head guard of Akita prison. He was the only guard who treated him respectfully. One night there was a knock on Kobayashi's door. Upon opening the door, he was surprised to find Shiratori standing in front of him. Shiratori explained to him the reason for his arrival. He stated that he never wanted to break the prison and complete his prison term, but he was disappointed with the behavior of jail guards and the torture by them. So the reason why he went to see Kobayashi was because he wanted to bring truth to his horrible treatment by the prison guards to the High Justice. And he would willingly turn himself in, and all he wanted was the head jail guard to give him credibility so the other prisoners didn't have to face the same treatment and maybe hopefully secure his release too. He further continued that Kobayashi was the only jail guard he liked in Akita prison. He wanted Kobayashi's help to take him to judicial authorities so that he could narrate the atrocities faced by him. Also, he wanted to be shifted to Tokyo prison to complete his prison term. Kobayashi assured him of help and offered dinner to Shiratori. But as soon as Shiratori went to the bathroom, Kobayashi informed the police. I mean, it's his literal job. What do you expect, huh? And the police arrived there immediately and arrested their convict. Now, I'm sorry, I know Shiratori is dead and all, but I have so many questions for him. What did you expect going to the home of a prison guard? What did you really expect? Who do you think you are? An anime protagonist? Did you really thought you'll be able to change someone's mind in 2 minutes using one motivational speech? Really? What were you thinking, man? I have so many questions for him. Anyways, let's just move on. Okay. So he is in prison again for the third time. After 3 months of his escape, Shiratori was again landed in Akita prison. His prison term was extended for 3 more years over the life imprisonment due to the jailbreak. He pleaded with the judge that he accepts his term of imprisonment, but he should be shifted to Tokyo prison as the prisoners were treated much better there. However, the judge refused his plea and transferred him to Abashiri prison, situated in the north of Hokkaido. Now, we could talk about Abashiri prison for a long time. Abashiri prison is located in the cold mountains, and it had a reputation of no prison break. This prison had the best security system. Some convicts who tried to flee were shot by the prison guards. And even if the prisoner were to escape, the temperature was so cold that they would never survive. This prison was pretty cold, and with sub-zero temperature even in the summer. Shiratori was brought to this prison in 1943 to serve his sentence. The jail guards knew about his previous escapes from prison, and just like the other guards, they used to torture him, verbally abuse him, make fun of him, and all that. One day, due to extreme torture by the jail guards, he became so furious that he broke his iron handcuffs in front of all the guards, just by the sheer strength of his arms. He challenged the guards that one day he would flee from this prison as well. The jail guards were very surprised to see the sheer strength of his arms. At this point, they knew that opening handcuffs or breaking them was an easy task for Shiratori. So they ordered a specially designed handcuff and leg cuff for him made with solid iron, weighing 2 kilos each. These handcuffs did not have any keyholes in them, and it took 2 hours by 2 trained blacksmiths to open these handcuffs. His hands were tied behind his back and handcuffed. Also, leg cuffs were tied to his ankles. These hand and leg cuffs were made exactly to his size, and when these cuffs were being made, it caused a lot of pain for him as well. Because his hands were tied behind his back, he couldn't really use his hands to eat food. He used to eat food like a dog, using his mouth as his hands and legs were tied. Twice a month, 2 blacksmiths used to visit him to open the specially designed handcuff and leg cuff, and he was allowed 2 hours for his bath. They again enchained him with these hefty handcuffs and leg cuff and leave. Shiratori was kept in a cell which was specially designed for him. The windows were made smaller than the size of his body. The walls of the cell were very smooth. He was always kept handcuffed and leg cuffed with specially designed heavy iron cuffs. One day after a year, a guard suddenly heard something on the top of the roof of the cell. He came to check in Shiratori's prison. Shiratori fled once again for the 3rd time, and this time from Abashiri prison, which had the reputation of no jailbreaks. So how did he exactly manage to do it? He started his planning about 6 months ahead. He used to put some soup on the joints of the handcuffs and leg cuffs every day. And he also used to spit some soup to a portion of the window from his mouth. He was aware that the salt content of the miso soup would make the iron rust, making it weaker. After 6 months of effort, the joints of handcuffs and leg cuffs became weak, and he was able to break and open the handcuffs and leg cuffs. But he also knew that he did not have much time to escape from prison. He had to escape from prison before the arrival of blacksmiths. One night he opened his handcuffs and leg cuffs and found that the screw of the window had weakened due to rust. But Jean, you just said that the window was very small. So how did he escape from the window? You see, he had another trick up his sleeve. He was able to willingly dislocate his shoulder joint to make his body smaller, and that is how he slid his body through the small window and ran to the roof and fled. This was a shame for Abashiri prison. The guards searched for him for a long time, but were unable to trace him. After a few days of search, the jail authorities stopped looking for him. They thought that some wild animals in the snowy mountains would have killed and eaten him. But Shiratori, against all odds, survived, and he found a safe cave amidst the snowy mountains and made a bunker for himself. He used to eat the fruits of surrounding trees and meat of animals like rabbits. Shiratori stayed in the bunker cave for about 2 years, entirely cutting himself off from the world. It was around 1945, and Japan had already surrendered to the Allied forces. The police authorities forgot about him and presumed him to be dead. He then decides to come out of his hiding and move to Sapporo in search of his family. He was surprised to see American soldiers in Sapporo walking along with Japanese women. He found a newspaper and came to know about the bombings. He thought that the situation in Japan has changed after the World War, and police would no longer be searching for him. At this point, he was quite hungry. But, he didn't really have any money on him. He couldn't just buy food. During his entire stay in the mountains, he had been just hunting wild animals and eating berries. So he decides to enter a farm and steals some tomatoes and starts eating them. The owner of the farm spots him and pounces on him, hitting him with the plow. In this ongoing tussle, Shiratori was able to grab the plow and hit back at the farm owner, killing him instantly. It was an accidental death that happened in self-defense. He tried to flee the spot, but was captured by the people nearby and handed over to the police, and he was sent to Sapporo jail. In 1947, the Sapporo, is it Sapporo or Sapporo? I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of these words, by the way. The Sapporo district judge pronounces the death penalty for him for the murder. The jail authorities were aware of his previous jailbreak incidents, and they formed a team of 6 armed guards to keep an eye on him. He was kept in a specially designed cell, keeping in mind his abilities. This time, the windows on the door and wall were made so small that no person could pass through that, not even Shiratori. The walls of the cell were made smooth with a high ceiling. The 6 armed guards kept a close watch on Shiratori. They did not even put handcuffs on him because they knew that he could break the handcuffs easily. He always used to stare up towards the ceiling and walls. Guards watching him used to make fun of this, and they thought that he was trying to escape the prison from the very high ceiling. He was provided with a sleeping mattress and made to sleep on the floor. He made a habit of waking up late in the mornings. He was abused and tortured by the guards for this habit, but he continued with this habit of getting up late. Some of the guards did allow him to oversleep for long hours, however. One night, the guards were amazed to find that Shiratori has escaped the prison once again. They found that doors were locked from the outside. The ceiling window was safe. The wall did not have any distortions. The entire cell was perfect. So, how did he manage to escape this time? The jail authorities had done all of this to prevent him from escaping the prison. Learning from their previous mistakes, they built this cell specially for him. So how? How was he able to escape? This time, Shiratori dug an old-fashioned tunnel under his sleeping mattress. He used to dig this tunnel using a bowl when the guards were asleep after securing him inside his cell, and he used to keep the mattress on top of it so that the guards didn't find out about his escape plan. He escaped from prison for the 4th time using this tunnel, and this time he was able to stay outside for about a year. A year later, one day Shiratori was sitting on a bench in a park in the outskirts of Sapporo City. A police officer in his uniform comes and sits beside him. He knew that the police officer was a high-ranking officer from the uniform he was wearing. He became quite tensed, which is understandable, and wanted to move away from that place. But suddenly, the police officer offered him a cigarette. Now remember, a cigarette was a luxury commodity in Japan during that time. So Shiratori accepts the cigarette from the officer and smokes. When he was sitting with the police officer, he was thinking about the torture suffered by him in the jail and the betrayal by an officer that he trusted. This man in his uniform had offered him a cigarette without even knowing him, and he started feeling guilty about himself. After finishing the cigarette, he stands up before the officer and discloses his identity as Yoshie Shiratori. This name was very famous among the police authorities. The officer looks at him and asks him the purpose of disclosing his identity. Shiratori replies, it was due to the respect provided to him by the officer that made him believe that all officers are not cruel. He narrates his entire story to the officer, mentioning that he is tired of running around and leading a solitary life. He further informs the officer that his fight is not against the jail, but against the atrocities and the treatment provided to the convicts in the jail. The police officer listens to his story, and when Shiratori ends his tale, the police officer gets up and takes Shiratori into custody. What did you expect? I mean, come on. I am sorry, Shiratori, but what did you Let's move on. Let's move on. So the police officer takes Shiratori into custody. He is arrested and brought in front of the judge. And after listening to Shiratori's plea, the court pronounces judgment, bearing him from the murder charge of the farmer as that happened in self-defense. And considering all the facts and events related to his jailbreaks, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. This time, the court accepted his wish to be transferred to the Tokyo prison. This prison was warm, and the guards were respectful and treated him with respect. After spending 14 years in prison, considering that he had served 6 years in the prison earlier, he was finally released from the prison in 1961. Shiratori was a free man, and he no longer feared the police. He went to Aomori, where he was born, where his family lived. He found that his wife had passed away a long time ago, and his daughter, who was a toddler when he first went to prison, had now grown to an adult woman. He tells his entire story to his daughter, and from 1961 to 1979, he lived with his daughter. In 1979, he died of a heart attack. It is largely due to Shiratori's effort that prison condition of Japan underwent a massive improvement. The guards were now provided with training to be more humane towards the convicts. So yeah, that is Shiratori's entire story. Like I've said, he is not necessarily a hero. He most likely did commit his first murder. He's not necessarily a hero, but his entire life story is a bit more complicated than that. I hope you enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed making it. I really enjoyed researching this. So yeah, that's all that I have for this video. Like this video if you liked it. Comment your thoughts down below about what you think. I just found out that, free stock footage exists, and now I'm just like, ooh, look at all these colors. They're so cool. Anyways, yeah, that's all that's been going on in my life right now. Oh, by the way, this was made into a movie as well. You cannot find this movie on Netflix, unfortunately, or any streaming platform whatsoever. I was able to find it on a very sketchy website. I'll just leave the name of the movie in the description. If you want to search for a sketchy website to watch this movie, you can. Anyways, that's all that I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.